Combining the talents of relative unknowns with powerhouse names in the industry has been the Star Wars tactic since way back in 1977, and it's worked pretty well for the most part. So much so that some actors have been brought back to play multiple characters. Some of these made perfect sense in a world of clones, while others were able to get away with portraying multiple characters thanks to having their faces covered by masks, CGI, or veiled behind an animated character. Even the very face of the franchise, the man behind one of the most famous characters in all of science fiction history, got away with playing a few more characters without most people initially realizing, as did everyone's favorite droids. I'm Andrew from What Culture Star Wars, and here's 10 actors who have played multiple Star Wars characters. Number 10, Kenny Baker. Of the Star Wars duo that could genuinely be labelled as two of the most famous robots in history, one has grown for itself something of a reputation as being quite annoying, while no one could have a bad word to say about the other. Rather than just an assistant of sorts to the likes of the Jedi and the Resistance, R2-D2 has many times been a hero in its own right. Played by Kenny Baker throughout both the original and prequel trilogies, the droid has become incredibly popular over the years. R2-D2 wasn't a CGI creation though, of course. Kenny Baker, at 3'8" tall, literally wore the droid essentially as a costume, and the actor was utilised again in a similar way in The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. However, not only did Kenny Baker play R2-D2 in Return of the Jedi, he also brought to life Plu, one of the many Ewoks who aided Han Solo and co. on the forest moon of Endor. Number 9, Anthony Daniels. There are only 2 Star Wars characters that have appeared in all 9 of the Skywalker saga movies, though even fewer actors have achieved that same recognition. R2-D2 has appeared in every Star Wars movie but Solo, though the droid was not brought to life by Kenny Baker in the sequel trilogy. C-3PO, on the other hand, he's been right next to R2 throughout the Skywalker saga and Rogue One, and has also been portrayed by Anthony Daniels at every single turn. This even stretches as far as the Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, and Obi-Wan Kenobi. The only movie that Anakin Skywalker's homemade android hasn't appeared in is Solo. However, that doesn't mean that Daniels didn't appear in that film. In fact, the actor appeared in Solo: A Star Wars Story without the usual gold outer shell as Tak, a Coruscant native who found himself working as a slave in the spice mines on Kessel. Even this wasn't the first non-droid character played by Anthony Daniels in Star Wars, as the actor can also be seen during the early stages of Attack of the Clones, when Anakin and Obi-Wan are chasing Padme's would-be assassin, Sam Vessel, through Coruscant's gritty underbelly. Number 8, Jeremy Bulloch. Ever since making his franchise debut, Boba Fett has become something of a cult hero to many Star Wars fans. The character was barely in The Empire Strikes Back, he spoke barely any lines of dialogue, yet fans still loved him. Though the most famous bounty hunter in the galaxy has risen to even more prominence in recent years, thanks to his portrayal in The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett by TEMUERA Morrison, an actor who we'll get to later on this list, TEMUERA Morrison wasn't the original person under the Boba mask. It would be impossible to tell thanks to the iconic green Mandalorian helmet, but the man who originally portrayed Boba Fett was Jeremy Bulloch. Though he had a long career that spanned many years, Bulloch's Star Wars appearances were by far the highest profile credits to his name, which didn't just end with Boba Fett. In Revenge of the Sith, Jeremy Bulloch had a cameo appearance as Captain Colton, the pilot who brought Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda back to Coruscant with Senator Organa. That was after the clones turned against the Jedi at Palpatine's order, Order 66 of course. With a name like Jeremock Colton, it's hard to imagine that this character wasn't named with Jeremy Bulloch in mind. Number 7, Silas Carson. Many of the actors on this list became initially famous in one Star Wars role, and were then brought back in some capacity in further films. Either that, or they just so happened to be a perfect clone of their original character that only they could ever play. Again, more on TEMUERA Morrison later. Silas Carson, however, is different. In his first appearance in A Galaxy Far Away, the English actor played no fewer than 4 roles. The Phantom Menace introduced so many new characters to the franchise, and apparently there just weren't enough actors to portray them all. So, 2 of Carson's 4 characters there were very minor that you likely wouldn't even recognize their names. Lot Dot, the Senator of the Trail Federation, and Antidar Williams, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan's pilot at the beginning of the movie. They were brought to life by Silas Carson, but these roles were nothing compared to his other 2 roles in that film. Across all 3 prequel trilogy movies, Carson was one of the key antagonists, as well as also playing a Jedi Master, as in his roles here were Newt Gunray and also Ki-Adi-Mundi. The actor also returned to these two roles in 2022, voicing both of those characters in the LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga video game. Number 6. Warwick Davis. Warwick Davis has a history of playing multiple characters in the same movie franchise. Thanks to the heavy makeup effects, the English actor was able to portray both Professor Flitwick and Griphook the Goblin throughout Harry Potter, but that is nothing compared to Warwick's Star Wars career. It would almost be too much effort to list every Star Wars movie Warwick Davis has appeared in, but hey, here goes anyway. You've got Return of the Jedi, The Phantom Menace, The Force Awakens, Rogue One, The Last Jedi, Solo: A Star Wars Story, and The Rise of Skywalker. That's an astonishing 7 out of the 11 Star Wars movies to date, across which Warwick Davis has played 10 different characters, starting all the way back in 1983 when he portrayed Wicket the Ewok when Warwick was just 13 years of age. Even outside the movies, Lucasfilm has utilised Warwick Davis. In the 4th season of Rebels, he played Rook, one of General Admiral Thrawn's bodyguards, and if his history with the Star Wars franchise is anything to go by, it's highly unlikely Warwick Davis will be featured again in the future at some point. Number 5. Carrie Fisher. You'd be forgiven for thinking that in a list like this, every performance would have to come within the Star Wars franchise, and for the most part that's true. The only exception though is Carrie Fisher, thanks to a certain homage to the Star Wars franchise by Seth MacFarlane. Of course, Fisher was renowned and beloved by all in her role as General Leia Organa across the original and sequel trilogies, and became no less than iconic in that role. However, thanks to Carrie's recurring role in Family Guy as Peter's boss Angela, she was able to bring a different character to life. In 2007, Family Guy produced a parody of A New Hope called Blue Harvest that cast Chris Griffin as Luke Skywalker, Peter and Brian as Han and Chewie, and Stewie as Darth Vader. Naturally, as the most important female character in the series, Lois Griffin played the role of Princess Leia, even in spite of Carrie Fisher herself being a part of the Family Guy cast. On the plus side, this freed Fisher up to play one of the few other female characters in the movie, that being Mon Mothma. She may only have had a couple of lines of dialogue, but it was enough to send those fans in the middle of the Star Wars Family Guy Venn diagram absolutely crazy. Number 4. D. Bradley Baker. It's the nature of animated shows to typically employ voice actors for more than one role. They are talented enough to bring several different characters to life without making them sound even remotely similar. Star Wars The Clone Wars, for example, was able to boast the likes of Kevin Michael Richardson, Tom Kane, Phil Lamar, and more to bring to life plenty of different characters, and all of those names would be worthy inclusions on this list. However, there is one name who stands out from the rest. Instead of making his character sound completely different in bringing every clone trooper to life in the series, D. Bradley Baker had the task of playing countless roles with exactly the same voice, all while still bringing to the table a certain personality and subtle difference to each and every one of these characters. Of course, this is no easy task, yet D. Bradley Baker absolutely nailed it. Aside from the likes of Cody and Rex, as well as countless other clones in the Clone Wars, the actor's talents have taken him to the front and centre, voicing every member of the titular team in the Bad Batch, from the standard clone voice of Hunter and Echo to more varied iterations of the same voice with Wrecker, Tech, and Crosshair. D. Bradley Baker's work in the Star Wars franchise is absolutely astonishing. Number 3. Temuera Morrison. The clone troopers have been brought to life exceptionally well throughout the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch, but what about in live action? Based on the bounty hunter Jango Fett, every clone from the Camino scenes in Attack of the Clones and through Revenge of the Sith was played by Temuera Morrison, while the clones themselves were only in a handful of scenes, unable to go into the depths of their characters in the same way that the animated series did. It was Jango Fett that was Morrison's first major role in Star Wars. Years later, he would add to this, however. Remember, the bounty hunter's one demand to allow a clone army to be bred from his DNA was to have an unaltered clone for his own. A son, essentially, that would grow up to look identical to him in every single way, which is why it was a no-brainer to bring Morrison back for The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. As Boba Fett himself, the most legendary bounty hunter in the galaxy, had appeared fleetingly in the original series, as played by Jeremy Bulloch. However, he never revealed the face beneath his helmet, thus allowing allowing Morrison to continue the character and keep the continuity as realistic as physically possible. Number 2, Andy Serkis. There was a time, up until very recently in fact, that when you heard the name Andy Serkis, you would instinctively associate him with the CGI characters he had brought to life over the years. In fairness, that is understandable, as he has mastered this craft like few others, joining the likes of Gollum, King Kong, Caesar, and more in the long line of characters brought to life by Serkis was Supreme Leader Snoke. The seemingly new big bad appeared as a hologram in The Force Awakens before a larger role came in The Last Jedi, a role that ultimately though saw Snoke unceremoniously killed. Thankfully, this wouldn't be the last fans saw of the incredibly talented Andy Serkis in the Star Wars universe. In recent years, Serkis has been showing his actual face more often while acting, and this was no different when he showed up opposite Diego Luna in Disney Plus's Andor. These days, it's almost impossible to keep any kind of casting a true secret, particularly in Star Wars. Even if there is no official confirmation, fans usually have a good idea of who will be showing up and where they will be showing up. With Andy Serkis' return as Kino Loy in Andor, however, this was one of the few genuinely well-kept secrets, something that made his brilliant appearance even better. Number 1, Mark Hamill. There are countless iconic characters and names associated with the Star Wars franchise, but no matter how you look at it, even next to the likes of Harrison Ford's Han Solo or Carrie Fisher's Leia Organa, Mark Hamill and Luke Skywalker are always at the top of the tree. Hamill portrayed Skywalker through the original trilogy and in both episodes 7 and 8, but his unparalleled voice acting skills have come in handy on more than one occasion. 4 more names can be credited to the voice of the face of the Star Wars franchise, though there are many more that may never be truly discovered. It was an iconic Star Wars moment when Luke returned to screens at the conclusion of the 2nd season of The Mandalorian, but Mark Hamill had in fact portrayed EV-99, the bartender droid in Mos Eisley back in the 5th ever episode of The Mandalorian. Add this to appearances as Dobuskay, a rather forgettable character, admittedly, met by Finn and Rose on Canto Bight in The Last Jedi. There was Bulio, another forgettable alien who was killed by Kylo Ren during the events of The Rise of Skywalker, and Darth Bane, the Sith Lord who created the Rule of Two in the Clone Wars. And you have a surprisingly wide Star Wars CV for Mark Hamill, or William M. Patrick as the movie credits would have you believe. So, this has been our 10 actors who have played multiple Star Wars characters. Be sure to like, subscribe, and of course, let us know in the comments if there's any other multi-role actors we've missed. Come and give us a follow on Twitter at WhatCultureSW or our main at WhatCulture page. And while you're there, you can follow myself at CulturedLeftPeg. But most importantly, you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you down the line in a galaxy far, far away.